April 8, 1943, high above France, Oberleutnant Ralph Hermeken, a seasoned German ace, couldn't suppress a smirk. Through the crisp air, he watched clumsy American shapes struggling skyward. Flying milk bottles, he scoffed to his wingman, laughter echoing over the radio. These were the new Republic P-47 Thunderbolts, lumbering beasts making their combat debut. 7 tons of raw power, straining against their massive engines. To the sleek, agile German fighters, these barrel-shaped behemoths, with their tiny wings and oversized propellers, looked almost comical. What Hermeken couldn't know, what none of the circling German wolves could possibly imagine, was that they were witnessing the arrival of their doom. These ridiculed milk bottles would in just 18 months become instruments of terror. Their 8.50 caliber Browning machine guns, unleashing 6,000 rounds per minute, would soon be the most dreaded sound in the European skies, capable of slicing an aircraft in half in less than 2 seconds. The math of destruction was already loaded in those broad wings. 3,400 rounds of pure, unadulterated devastation. That fateful April morning, Major Donald Blakesley, fresh from flying nimble Spitfires, understood a chilling truth his men hadn't grasped. To survive in the P-47 meant unlearning everything they knew about dogfighting. While Germany perfected light, agile interceptors, America had built a high-altitude juggernaut, a monster designed to redefine aerial combat through sheer mass, power, and overwhelming firepower. Among the 56 American novices in the sky were future legends, but today, they faced the world's most experienced fighter force, veterans of 4 years of relentless combat. The Americans, in contrast, had precisely 0 days of combat experience. This is the story of how industrial might crushed tactical brilliance, how overwhelming quantity and relentless quality forged an unstoppable weapon, and how German laughter transformed into terror as they discovered the true meaning of synchronized Browning machine guns at 400 yards. The P-47 Thunderbolt was born from panic in June 1940 as German fighters swept across France. Republic Aviation's chief designer, Alexander Kartveli, was tasked with creating a high-altitude interceptor to match the Luftwaffe's best. What he delivered was a revolutionary, almost shocking, Leviathan. It will be a dinosaur, Kartveli admitted, but a dinosaur with good proportions. When the XP-47B prototype first flew in May 1941, it stunned everyone. Weighing 65% more than its predecessor, with a massive turbo-supercharger system snaking through its fuselage, test pilots invariably asked, "This thing actually flies?" Not only did it fly, it soared. Its 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, fed by that ingenious turbo supercharger, maintained full power at 27,000 feet, an altitude where German engines choked for air. It was built for the stratosphere. Early training was brutal. Major Hubert Hub Zemke, commanding the 56th Fighter Group, initially despised the aircraft. The P-47 killed more Americans in training than Germans would in the first months of combat, with deadly ground loops, torque rolls, and uncontrolled dives that froze controls. Yet those who mastered it discovered something extraordinary. Lieutenant Robert Johnson, an Oklahoma farm boy who would become a 27 victory ace, described his first flight. "It was like strapping yourself to a locomotive. The power was unbelievable. You didn't fly it, you aimed it." Initial combat in April and May 1943 seemed to confirm every German prejudice. P-47s couldn't outturn FW-19s or outclimb Me-19s at medium altitudes. Luftwaffe pilots quickly developed tactics to exploit these weaknesses, attacking from below, forcing turning fights. Hajo Hermann, commander of Jagdgeschwader 26, dismissively reported, The new American fighter is meat for the slaughter. It flies like a truck, turns like a freight train, and climbs like a pregnant cow. Our boys are calling them Indians, fat targets pretending to be warriors. The numbers agreed. 14 Thunderbolts lost for only 3 confirmed German kills in the first month. The RAF even joked that a P-47's best evasive maneuver was to run around its roomy cockpit. But something sinister was lurking beneath the surface, something German intelligence failed to grasp. P-47s that went down had absorbed unbelievable punishment. One returned from a May mission with 21 cannon holes and over 100 machine gun strikes, damage that would have disintegrated any other fighter. The massive radial engine, lacking vulnerable coolant systems, shrugged off hits that would have stopped liquid-cooled fighters cold. More significantly, when P-47s did connect, the results were catastrophic. Their 8.50 caliber machine guns created a convergence zone of destruction unlike anything German pilots had ever experienced. Unlike the rifle-caliber weapons of early warfighters or cannons with limited ammunition, the American fighter could sustain fire for over 30 seconds, an eternity in aerial combat. The turning point began on June 26, 1943, over Lille, France. Second Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson, flying at the rear of his formation, was caught in a brutal ambush by 16 FW-190s. 20-millimeter cannon shells shredded his aircraft. The canopy shattered, hydraulic fluid sprayed. The engine cowling tore away, and fire erupted. Wounded and trapped, as the canopy was jammed shut by an exploding shell, Johnson found himself in a dying aircraft at 27,000 feet. Yet defying every law of physics and combat damage, the P-47 kept flying. With barely functioning controls and almost no forward visibility, Johnson nursed the wreck towards England. Then, a lone FW-190 discovered the crippled Thunderbolt, limping at a mere 170 miles per hour. The German pilot opened fire, emptying his cannons, then his machine guns, into the unyielding American machine. Johnson huddled behind his armor plate, praying. The Thunderbolt absorbed the entire cannon ammunition load. The German pilot pulled alongside, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion, then to outright fear. He emptied his remaining machine gun rounds. Still, it flew. Shaking his head in apparent amazement, the German pilot gave an informal salute and peeled away, presumably out of ammunition. Johnson's P-47 landed at Manston, its engine failing on the runway. Ground crew stopped counting bullet holes after 200. Cannon shells had detonated inches from his head and against his seat armor. Control cables were partially severed. 3 of the 4 main structural longerons were shot through. Yet the aircraft had brought him home. Johnson's miraculous survival sent shockwaves through both air forces. German intelligence initially refused to believe the reports. The Thunderbolt had taken everything the Luftwaffe's best could deliver and lived. By July 1943, American pilots were rapidly learning the P-47's true strengths. Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Zemke, through brutal trial and error, uncovered the secret. Don't turn with them. Don't climb with them at low altitude. Use your weight, use your power, use your guns. The Thunderbolt's massive weight, initially a disadvantage, became its deadliest weapon. In a dive, nothing could catch it. From 30,000 feet, a P-47 could hit 550 miles per hour, faster than any German fighter, even in a vertical dive. This speed could then be converted into a screaming zoom climb, leaving pursuers hopelessly behind. Captain Walker Bud Mahurin, one of America's first European aces, perfected the boom and zoom tactic, or as pilots called it, the Thunderbolt Turkey Shoot. Instead of dogfighting, P-47 formations climbed to 30,000 feet, far above German operational altitudes. When Luftwaffe fighters appeared below, the Thunderbolts rolled inverted and plunged, reaching speeds that made deflection shooting impossible for their unsuspecting targets. At the bottom of these dives, the American heavy machine guns unleashed hell. German pilots described it as facing a wall of lead. Aircraft caught in this convergence pattern didn't just fall, they disintegrated. The true horrifying revelation of American firepower came on August 17, 1943, during the deep penetration raids on Schweinfurt and Regensburg. Major David Schilling, leading the 62nd Fighter Squadron, encountered a formation of Messerschmitt Bf 110 destroyer aircraft, heavily armed bomber killers. Schilling's flight of 4 Thunderbolts rolled into their attack dive from 28,000 feet. Unteroffizier Heinrich Roth, a gunner in one of the Bf 110-9s, later recounted, "The American fighters came down like hammers from heaven. I opened fire at 800 meters. Good hits. I saw them strike the fighter's wing. The P-47 didn't even wobble. Then he fired. The aircraft ahead of us simply came apart, not shot down, destroyed. Wings separated from fuselage, tail severed, the crew compartment shredded into metal confetti. In 2 seconds, a 110 became nothing. 8 Bf 110s were annihilated in less than a minute. German pilots had never experienced such concentrated firepower. Each P-47 carried 425 rounds per gun, 3,400 rounds total, weighing nearly 900 pounds. At a typical convergence distance of 300 yards, all 8 guns intersected in a 6-foot diameter zone. Anything caught there faced 100.50 caliber projectiles per second, each traveling at 2,900 feet per second. This wasn't just firepower. It was a probability cloud of destruction. The ammunition itself was a marvel of American industrial capacity. While German fighters struggled with limited cannon rounds, 120 to 200 per gun, American pilots could sustain fire for over half a minute. The standard combat load mixed armor-piercing incendiary tracer, and ball ammunition, designed to both destroy and ignite. Lieutenant Colonel Francis Gabby Gabreski, America's top ace in Europe with 28 victories, described the effect. When you hit them with all 8, they don't just go down, they explode. I saw a 109 literally cut in half, the tail falling one way, the nose and wings another. The pilot never knew what hit him. By September 1943, the Luftwaffe faced another horrifying truth. The P-47's performance improved dramatically with altitude, while German fighters suffered. The turbo-supercharged double Wasp engine maintained its rated power up to 30,000 feet. German fighters relying on less advanced superchargers saw their performance degrade significantly above 25,000 feet. Oberleutnant Hans Philipp, one of Germany's most successful aces with 206 victories, met this reality fatally on October 8, 1943. Leading Jagdgeschwader 1 against B-17s at 28,000 feet, Philipp's FW-190. A-6 was sluggish in the thin air. Robert Johnson, now an ace, flying at 31,000 feet, spotted Philippe's distinctive FW-190. Johnson's combat report was chillingly clinical. Opened fire at 300 yards, 30-degree deflection. Observed strikes along entire fuselage. Enemy aircraft exploded. No parachute observed. Philipp's death sent shockwaves through the Luftwaffe. If one of their best, a veteran of over 500 combat missions, couldn't survive the Thunderbolts, what chance did anyone else have? A sobering report delivered to Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring in November 1943 confirmed the P-47's terrifying capabilities. A service ceiling over 42,000 feet, dive speeds approaching the sound barrier, heavy armor, and rugged construction that allowed it to absorb damage that would destroy 3 conventional fighters and still return home. In January 1944, a new variant, the P-47D-22, arrived in England, completing the transformation from laughingstock to nightmare. It featured a massive 13-foot diameter Hamilton standard paddle blade propeller that bit into the air like enormous oars. The climb rate soared from an anemic 2,200 feet per minute to a staggering 3,000 feet per minute, matching or exceeding German fighters at most altitudes. The paddle blades did more than improve performance. They changed the sound of the Thunderbolt. The distinct thundering roar created by blade tips reaching supersonic speeds could be heard for miles. German ground troops began identifying approaching P-47s by sound alone, a deep, threatening rumble. They called it Donnerschlag, thunderclap. By March 1944, P-47s, now equipped with external fuel tanks, could escort bombers deep into Germany. Their range extended to over 1,000 miles. With the paddle blade propeller, they could fight on equal terms immediately after dropping tanks. The Luftwaffe's attempts to concentrate on bombers meant flying through this P-47 escort screen, an increasingly suicidal proposition. German pilots developed a grudging respect that bordered on fear. Major Günther Röhl, one of Germany's top aces, recalled a March 1944 encounter. "We saw them above us, fat silhouettes against the sun. Someone laughed and said, 'Here come the flying pigs.' Nobody was laughing 30 seconds later. They came down like an avalanche, faster than we could react. The first pass destroyed 3 of our fighters, just gone, transformed into burning debris. Their guns didn't fire in bursts like ours. They poured out solid streams of fire. Getting caught in that stream meant instant death." As more P-51 Mustangs arrived for long-range escort, P-47 units increasingly focused on ground attack, a role that would make them the most feared aircraft in the German arsenal. The D-25 variant could carry 2 1,000-pound bombs and a 500-pounder, a bomb load equal to early war medium bombers. Later variants added racks for 10 5-inch high-velocity aircraft rockets, HVARs, each equivalent to a 105mm artillery shell. Oberst Hans von Luck, commanding the 125th Panzer Grenadier Regiment during the Normandy campaign, experienced P-47 ground attacks firsthand. They came in low, so low you could see the pilots' faces. The sound was terrifying. Engines roaring, rockets screaming. Then the hammer of those heavy machine guns. A column of our trucks simply ceased to exist. 20 vehicles transformed into burning wreckage in one pass. The psychological effect on the men was devastating. They called them Jabos, fighter bombers. But these were something beyond that. They were flying artillery with the accuracy of snipers. On June 6, 1944, the Luftwaffe discovered how completely the balance of power had shifted. Over 500 P-47s provided an impenetrable air umbrella over the Normandy beaches. German fighters attempting to reach the landing zones were massacred. Oberleutnant Wolfgang Fischer, one of only 3 German pilots to reach the beaches that day, reported, "The sky belonged to the Americans. Thunderbolts were stacked from sea level to 30,000 feet. We tried to break through at dawn. 12 fighters from our group. I was the only one to return. The P-47s were waiting at every altitude. You couldn't climb over them. Couldn't dive under them. Their guns turned our fighters into aluminum rain." In the weeks following D-Day, P-47s systematically destroyed German movement in daylight. In June alone, 9th Air Force Thunderbolts claimed 651 locomotives, 3,847 trucks, 512 tanks, and 4,553 horse-drawn vehicles destroyed. The Wehrmacht was forced to move only at night. severely hampering their ability to respond to Allied advances. German attempts to counter, reinforced armor, more anti-aircraft guns, new camouflage, failed. The P-47's combination of speed, armor, and firepower made them nearly unstoppable. While devastating Europe, the P-47 simultaneously proved its worth in the Pacific. Colonel Neil Kirby, commanding the 348th Fighter Group in New Guinea, developed tactics specifically for the vast distances and harsh conditions. On October 11, 1943, Kirby led 4 P-47s against 40 Japanese aircraft, shooting down 6 himself in one mission, earning him the Medal of Honor. Japanese ace Saburo Sakai, encountering P-47s, wrote, "We called them monsters. Our 20mm cannon, which could destroy a P-40 with a few hits, seemed to have no effect. I put dozens of rounds into one Thunderbolt and watched it fly away. Their return fire was terrifying, streams of heavy bullets that tore aircraft apart." The P-47N, developed for the Pacific, featured wet wings for increased fuel capacity, extending its range to 2,350 miles, allowing it to escort B-29s all the way to Japan, a far cry from the short-legged fighter of 1943. Perhaps the ultimate vindication of the P-47 came in its encounters with German jet fighters. The Messerschmitt Me 262, with its 540 miles per hour top speed, should have been untouchable by propeller-driven aircraft. But Thunderbolt pilots discovered they could catch jets in 2 situations: during takeoff and landing, when jets were most vulnerable, and in high-speed dives from altitude. On November 27, 1944, Lieutenant Colonel John C. Meyer became one of the first pilots to shoot down a Me 262 with a P-47. Diving from 28,000 feet, Meyer's Thunderbolt reached nearly 500 miles per hour, fast enough to catch the jet in level flight. The jet pilot, confident in his speed, never saw the diving P-47 until Meyer's guns opened fire at 400 yards. Meyer's report noted, "The enemy aircraft disintegrated under fire. Large pieces, including both engines, separated from the fuselage. The pilot did not escape. The concentrated fire of 8.50 caliber guns proved more effective than we anticipated against jet aircraft." By early 1945, specialized P-47M variants, with water methanol injection boosting power to 2,800 horsepower and refined aerodynamics, could reach 470 miles per hour in level flight at 30,000 feet, fast enough to intercept jets under certain conditions. Major George Bostwick, who shot down 2 Me 262s in March 1945, emphasized firepower over speed. "The jets are faster, but they can't turn, and they can't take punishment. One good burst from our battery, and they come apart like they're made of paper. They have to slow down to attack bombers. That's when we get them." The ultimate demonstration of American industrial might came during Operation Bodenplatte, the Luftwaffe's desperate attempt to destroy Allied air power on January 1, 1945. Nearly 900 German fighters launched surprise attacks on Allied airfields. At Y-34 Airfield near Metz, home to the 365th Fighter Group's P-47s, the attack initially succeeded, destroying 22 Thunderbolts on the ground. A captured German pilot, taunting Major George Brooking, pointed at the burning aircraft and asked, "What do you think of that?" Brooking's response became legendary. He pointed to the flight line where ground crews were already preparing hard stands for replacements. "By tomorrow, we'll have 40 new ones. How long will it take you to replace your pilots?" Within 48 hours, factory-fresh P-47 D-40S filled the flight line. The Luftwaffe lost 271 aircraft and 213 irreplaceable pilots in Bodenplatte. The Americans lost 134 aircraft, all replaced within a week. The numbers told the story of inevitable defeat. Republic Aviation produced 15,683 P-47s during the war, more than any other American fighter. At its peak, the Farmingdale factory completed one Thunderbolt every hour, around the clock. The Evansville plant, built from empty farmland, produced 500 aircraft per month by 1944. Each P-47 required 65,000 individual parts, 8 miles of wiring, and an engine with 2,400 components machined to incredible tolerances. Yet American workers, many women who had never seen an aircraft before Pearl Harbor, assembled these complex machines with precision exceeding peacetime standards. Ammunition production was equally staggering. Each P-47 sortie required 3,400 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition. With hundreds of Thunderbolts flying daily, consumption exceeded 10 million rounds per month. The Lake City Arsenal alone produced 30 million rounds monthly, each manufactured to tolerances of 10,000ths of an inch for flawless feeding. Fuel consumption was enormous. 100 gallons per hour in normal flight, up to 300 gallons in combat. The 9th Air Force alone consumed over 25 million gallons monthly, all shipped across the Atlantic in tankers that were themselves products of American mass production. Even more impressive was pilot training. By 1944, the U.S. was graduating 30,000 pilots annually, more than Germany had trained in the entire war. Each P-47 pilot received a minimum of 400 hours of flight training before combat, including 100 hours in advanced fighters. German pilots, by war's end, often entered combat with less than 100 hours total. The quality showed. Lieutenant Eugene Roberts, arriving in England in September 1944, encapsulated the advantage. I had 420 hours in my logbook, including 75 hours in the P-47. My first mission, I knew exactly what to do. The German pilot I faced couldn't have had half my experience. It wasn't even a fair fight. In March 1945, Oberstleutnant Josef Priller, the same pilot who had mocked the P-47s as pregnant cows 2 years earlier, was interviewed by German propaganda officials. His statement, deemed too demoralizing for publication, revealed the complete transformation in German attitudes. The Thunderbolt is the best fighter bomber ever built. Its firepower is unprecedented. Beyond the machine is what it represents: unlimited American production. They lose 10, they build 20, we lose 1, it's gone forever. Their pilots arrive better trained than our instructors. We laughed at them in 1943. We're not laughing now. When you hear those guns, you know death has come calling. The sound haunts us. Mechanical, precise, unstoppable. Like everything American, it's about overwhelming material superiority. They didn't beat us through better tactics or braver pilots. They buried us under an avalanche of steel and lead. By April 1945, the Luftwaffe existed largely on paper. Fuel shortages grounded most aircraft, experienced pilots were dead or captured, airfields were ruins. German pilots developed Jabo fever, physical symptoms of stress appearing when Thunderbolts were reported. Veterans who had faced Spitfires and Hurricanes without fear became physically ill before missions against P-47s. The distinctive thunder of approaching Thunderbolts caused panic among ground troops, who knew survival meant immediate cover. The final statistics defied comprehension. In Europe, P-47s destroyed 3,752 German aircraft in aerial combat and 3,315 on the ground. They annihilated 86,000 railway cars, 9,000 locomotives, 6,000 armored fighting vehicles, 68,000 trucks, and 60,000 horse-drawn vehicles. In the Pacific, they destroyed 697 Japanese aircraft in the air and 150 on the ground, along with thousands of vehicles and installations. The 9th Air Force alone, primarily equipped with P-47s, flew 213,873 combat sorties, dropped 120,000 tons of bombs, fired 135 million rounds of ammunition, and launched 60,000 rockets. Thunderbolt units achieved a 4.6 to 1 kill ratio in aerial combat while maintaining the lowest loss rate of any Allied fighter bomber. The human cost was staggering. The Luftwaffe lost approximately 28,000 pilots, killed in combat against Western Allied forces, many to the concentrated fire of American heavy machine guns. These were losses Germany could never replace. By war's end, the average German fighter pilot had less than 30 hours of combat experience. The average P-47 pilot had over 200. At the Luftwaffe Interrogation Center, captured Allied pilot debriefs revealed the complete reversal of opinion on the P-47. April 1943. Large, unmaneuverable fighter, inferior to German types, minimal threat. December 1943. Exceptional high-altitude performance, extreme structural strength, firepower increasingly problematic, significant threat above 25,000 feet. June 1944. Dominant fighter bomber, superior to all German types above 20,000 feet, firepower devastating, shoot down extremely difficult, critical threat at all altitudes. March 1945. Best fighter bomber of the war. Combination of firepower, durability, and performance unmatched. Pilot quality exceptional. Unsurvivable in direct engagement. In 1985, at a reunion of former adversaries, General Adolf Galland, former head of the Luftwaffe fighter arm, captured the complete transformation. We made a terrible mistake in 1943. We saw this big, heavy fighter and laughed. We were the ones who didn't understand. The Americans didn't try to build a European fighter. They built an American one designed around production, firepower, and survivability. The first time I flew a captured P-47 after the war, I understood everything. The power was incredible. It was a pilot's aircraft wrapped in armor. But what really impressed me was realizing that America built over 15,000 of these complex machines while fighting a two-ocean war. That's when I knew we never had a chance. Those guns, we called them Roosevelt's piano because of the sound they made. Once you heard that sound, you never forgot it. Many of my friends heard it for the last time. The P-47 didn't just defeat the Luftwaffe, it destroyed it. The P-47's design perfectly embodied American industrial philosophy, brute force engineering backed by unlimited resources. Every component was overbuilt, overpowered, and over-engineered. Its wing spars could support 40,000 pounds, 3 times its loaded weight. The ammunition feed system alone was a marvel, with 8 separate boxes, each holding 425 rounds, fed by electric boost motors to prevent jamming during violent maneuvers. Guns were electrically heated to prevent freezing and could be individually synchronized, with convergence adjustable from 150 to 400 yards. Even after the war, some German veterans argued the P-47 won through quantity, not quality, that German fighters were technically superior but overwhelmed by numbers. Combat records tell a different story. In engagements where numbers were equal, P-47s consistently prevailed. The heavy machine gun armament, initially dismissed as inferior to cannon, proved more effective in actual combat. Gun camera footage showed why. Cannon shells, while individually destructive, required precise aim and had limited ammunition. The P-47's weapons created a probability cloud of bullets that guaranteed hits even with imperfect aim. A 2-second burst put at least 20 rounds into a fighter-sized target, ensuring destruction. American .50 caliber armor-piercing incendiary rounds used a delayed action fuse, ensuring penetration before detonation, with incendiary compounds burning at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to ignite aluminum. German 20mm shells often exploded on surface contact, causing spectacular but sometimes superficial damage. The P-47 Thunderbolt remains the heaviest single-engine piston fighter ever mass-produced. Its empty weight exceeded the gross weight of some twin-engine fighters. Its engine produced more power than entire bomber formations from the previous war. Its weapons delivered more firepower than a squad of infantry. Yet it was built by the thousands, flown by kids barely out of high school, and maintained under combat conditions by mechanics who learned their trade in weeks. The transformation of German opinion, from mockery to terror, took less than 2 years. In that time, the flying milk bottle became the most feared aircraft in the Luftwaffe's experience. Veterans who had faced Spitfires, Hurricanes, and Soviet Yaks, without flinching, spoke of P-47s in hushed tones decades after the war. At the United States Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, a restored P-47D stands among other legendary fighters. Its placard lists specifications and battle honors, but the real story is told by a small display case containing spent .50 caliber shells and a strip of gun camera film showing a Focke-Wulf 190 disintegrating under fire. Below the display is a quote from an unnamed German pilot from a 1945 interrogation report. "We laughed when we first saw them. Fat, ugly American fighters that couldn't turn, couldn't climb, couldn't fight. We stopped laughing when we realized they didn't need to turn or climb. They just pointed those guns at you and you ceased to exist. The laughter died with our comrades." The P-47 Thunderbolt entered combat as an object of derision and ended the war as an instrument of annihilation. In between, 8 synchronized Browning machine guns rewrote the rules of aerial warfare and buried the Luftwaffe under an avalanche of lead. German pilots had laughed at the ungainly American fighter in April 1943. By May 1945, there were no German pilots left to laugh. The thunder had spoken, and the sky belonged to America.